Today, our portion is called Balak, and I've entitled it, Can We Be Bought? The Israelites, a little bit of the history, the Israelites were encamped outside Moab, just across the Jordan River. And that's what we call West Central Jordan today, very close to Israel. The Moabites were terrified because of the sheer numbers at their border. They had heard the song by the bards, "Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Chemosh." They had also heard about how the God of the Hebrews had been fighting for them since they left Egypt and how the Israelites had defeated the Amorites. King Balak cried out to the elders of Midian, "Now this horde will lick up everything around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field." So we might wonder, why wouldn't King Balak simply send out his army to fight them? He was powerful, rich. But Balak said to Balaam, "For I know that whomever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed." Balaam, the prophet, practiced divination, and he was highly sought after in his day. The king understood that this war had to be fought on the spiritual plane before it could be won on the physical. That's why he called for Balaam to curse Israel, so that perhaps he could defeat them and drive them from his land. Even then, he wasn't certain. People believed then, and even now, in the power of the gods. Even their kings were considered gods. Balak consulted the elders of Midian, who was a neighboring tribe. They were influential and respected for their wisdom, and they also felt threatened. It was a strategic and religious alliance. It was also in the family. Midian was related to Moses, whose father-in-law Yitro was there when Moses had received his call from God at the burning bush. The people who lived in that area, they knew to call Mount Sinai the mountain of God. It was the war of the gods against the God of Israel, and it still is to this very day. Now, the portion tells us that Balaam, as I said before, practiced divination. But those of us who know the Torah have read Deuteronomy 18, which warns us, "Let no one be found among you who is a fortune teller, an astrologer, a psychic, an enchanter, one who practices divination, one who casts spells, or consults ghosts or familiar spirits, or one who consults the dead. For anyone who does such things is abhorrent to Yud He Vav He, and it is because of these abominable things that your God, Yud He Vav He, is dispossessing them before you. You must be wholehearted with your God." I'd like to talk about this a little more later, because this made me wonder about Yeshua, but we'll get back to that. I didn't want to go into that here. Now, I don't know if you realize that Hitler surrounded himself with astrologers and psychics. And in our history, there's a long list of cult leaders. Just to name a few: Egypt's Pharaoh. In Mesopotamia, Rome, Greece, China, Mali, they all had their leaders who were considered gods. The Dalai Lama of Tibet, and the leader of Nepal, with its Shah dynasty considered to be incarnations of Vishnu. Many religions elevate men, and in some cases women, to having God-like powers. Sadly, this even occurs in Orthodox Judaism, with its adherents flocking to the graves of venerated rabbis to pray and seek guidance from the dead, and others who say that their rabbi is reincarnated and still alive. These are pagan practices and far from the teachings of the written Torah. Why do I emphasize this point? because as I know personally, there is danger in following such leaders, and it is rampant today. Self-proclaimed prophets are popping up all over social media with videos warning us on every subject, including the end times. Deuteronomy 18 continues, but any prophet who presumes to speak in my name a prophecy that I did not command to be uttered, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. And should you ask yourself, how could we know if an oracle was not spoken by Yud He Vav He or Adonai? If the prophet speaks in the name of Adonai and the prophecy does not come true, that oracle was not spoken by God. The prophet has uttered it presumptuously. Do not revere that person. How many people wait to see if a prophecy comes true or not? They've long forgotten it. But Bilam knew that he couldn't speak anything except what God told him to say. And in Numbers 22, Bilam refers to Yud He Vav He in his response to the messenger sent from King Balak. He said, spend the night here, and I shall reply to you as Yud He Vav He may instruct me. He knew who the king of Israel was, the one who spoke to Moses. But were the intentions of his heart to serve this God or to serve himself? The key is not whether we believe in the existence of the God of Israel, the Creator, but whether we are willing to follow his principles and trust him. Most of the world would agree that there's a God, no matter who they think he is, even if they address him by different names, and even if they're atheists. Even an atheist has to admit that there is something out there not to believe in. Bilam knew he couldn't curse what God had blessed, yet he kept trying because deep down he could be bought. We call him a prophet for hire. Yet let's not be too smug, for how often have you and I struggled with breaking one of God's commandments because the reward was so enticing? This is a challenge for us in this area, whether we're living in the promised land or not. We may not even realize that we are breaking his commandments because there are so many religious rules and regulations in our particular denomination that the 10 commandments given to us by God have been superseded and drowned out. It's not easy to be wholehearted for our God. Balak was strong, rich, an influential king in his day. And he was going to try to he said he was going to make Balaam very rich. All Balaam had to do was say a few words to curse the Israelites, even if he lied. Balaam tried 3 times, but couldn't do it. He had already told that to Balak in Numbers 23. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I denounce whom God has not denounced? Look at how many are cursing Israel today. In Numbers 24, God chose to reveal a prophecy to Balaam concerning the future of Balak, the Moabites, and the enemies of Israel. Starting at verse 17, here's a few verses. And now as I go back to my people, let me inform you of what this people will do to your people in the days to come. What I see for them is not yet. What I behold will not be soon. A star rises from Jacob. A scepter comes forth from Israel. It smashes the brow of Moab, the foundation of all the children of Seth, referring to all humanity. Edom becomes a possession. Yes, Seir, a possession of its enemies. But Israel is triumphant. A victor issues from Jacob to wipe out what is left of Ir. A leading nation is Amalek, but its fate is to perish forever. Alas, Who can survive except that God has willed it? Our sages say that this star and scepter could be King David and or the Messiah, and Christians say it refers to Jesus, and that it is the Jews who will have to endure the tribulation of the end times. Let's be careful when we put words in God's mouth and fear false prophets. Instead, let's watch and see what God is doing in our time. I got so excited when I read Numbers 23, verse 24, which says, "Behold, a people that rises like a lioness and leaps up like a lion." What just happened in the Middle East? Under the code name Operation Rising Lion, the IDF and Mossad attacked and destroyed key nuclear sites and military installations in Iran. They have vowed to wipe Israel off the map, but they don't realize that they are fighting against the God of Israel. As I said, it's a spiritual war. We are living the Torah right now through the words on these pages. It's not a book that pertains only to the past, to an ancient people who are no longer in the sight of their God. Our God is a God of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He does not forget his promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he does not change his words that he etched in stone and handed to Moses on Mount Sinai. These are the words that we need to memorize and live by. When I was in school, I had to memorize poetry, some of which I can still remember to this day. But the most important thing that any child should have to memorize and practice is the 10 Commandments. Although we read them at every Shabbat service in our community, if I ask us to recite all 10 Commandments, can we? Every day we face situations in our life that require applying aspects of these 10, forcing us to make difficult choices. Most people just want to be loved, accepted, and prosperous. Bilam was put in a very tough spot. He knew the God of Israel. He knew what he could and could not do, but he chose to go against them for the reasons we talked about. When Bilam went to seek God's instructions, he offered 7 bulls, 7 rams on 7 altars. Was God pleased with these sacrifices? In the Haftorah, prophet Micah tells us, "My people, remember what Balak, king of Moab, devised, and what Bilam, the son of Beor, answered him, so that you may know the righteous acts of God. With what shall we approach God and bow down before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with a calf a year old? Will God be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000 streams of oil?" It made me wonder why we're looking to rebuild a temple in Jerusalem, to reinstate the sacrificial system, when God says here he wasn't pleased with our offerings. But what does please God? Our parasha ends with a warning for all time. Bilam finally found a way to curse Israel without doing it himself through his words. He encouraged the beautiful women, the Moabite women, to seduce the Israelite men, luring them to their gods. Then the Lord ordered Moses to take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before God, so that God's wrath may turn away from Israel. Moses didn't see these orders carried out. He didn't see it through. So Pinchas stepped in and did it for him. This is what stopped the plague, but not before 24,000 of our people had died as a consequence of their own obedience. This is so important to remember. How many of our young men intermarry with Gentile women who entice them to leave the ways of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Now, don't get me wrong. The problem is not that they are Gentiles, because we know the story of Ruth. She was a Moabite. And it's not that I blame them. We are a lost people without a true shepherd. Rabbi Yeshua was a true shepherd. He worked hard to bring our people back to the written Torah, which teaches us to apply God's 10 commandments. We have many false shepherds and many prophets like Balaam among our religious leaders, not only in Judaism, but in every religion. Remember, religions divide people. It is a relationship with the God of creation that unites people. How many religious leaders choose to lead a congregation because they desire to serve God? Or do they love the prestige of their profession and, of course, the remuneration? Or has their position put them in a place where they could further their religious and political agenda? There are prophets like Balaam who speak with a forked tongue from two sides of their face. They're popular and they're for hire, but before we realize it, they are leading us down the path or the road to destruction. And there are also lesser known prophets like Micah who speak words that may not be popular, but lead us in the right direction. So, what does God want from us today? Our prophet Micah is very clear. He said, "You have been told, O mortal, what is good and what God requires of you, only to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." I know that this is not a popular message. Look what was done by the Romans to Yeshua. And today, we still have the blind leading the blind. But thanks to God, there is always a remnant willing and able to return to the mighty God. Shabbat Shalom.